Hello everyone. So today we are going to start a new series of video which will deal with ecology and environment, and here we'll first have a basic understanding of ecology and environment, and then we will move to biodiversity and other things and things like pollution, etc. And lastly we will come to know about the recent happenings and what are the conventions and protocols undertaken to conserve the environment. Okay, so let's have a basic understanding about the earth, then we'll come to know about its environment. So the earth is the home to a wide variety of organisms. It has its own unique atmosphere, which is very important for regulating temperature. The atmosphere helps to regulate ambient temperature, which is suitable for supporting life. Earth is the only planet known so far to sustain life. And why? Because of various factors. We will see one by one what are those factors. The very first factor is presence of water. So life originated in water before it colonized land. So most living beings still require water for sustenance, their sustenance. Okay. So arid areas like Patagonia desert are devoid of much life. Okay. While Amazon rainforest is full of biodiversity. So deserts where you have little rainfall are devoid of life, but rainforests are very rich in biodiversity. So water is very much important for sustaining life. Then we have atmosphere. So basically the atmosphere contains 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. So a small amount of carbon dioxide, water vapor, ozone and rare gases are also there like neon and argon. So carbon dioxide helps to keep the environment somewhat warmer because of the effect which is called as greenhouse effect. Then water vapor is also important for water cycle, and ozone is also important because it protects us from UV radiations. Then what? Then we have temperature. So the variation in temperature is very less as compared to other planets like Mercury, etc. And the average temperature of Earth is around 16 degrees Celsius. Then one more thing is there which is called buffering capacity of Earth, that is it maintains almost a neutral pH of around 7. Then initially when Earth was formed, it had a reducing atmosphere which contained methane, ammonia, CO2, H2, etc. Water vapor was there, but no free oxygen was present during that time. Then eventually what happened, water vapor condensed to form water. In water molecules, life originated for the first time, and bacteria having chlorophyll, they came into being. Then photosynthesis started, and due to this process you get oxygen. So oxygen started to accumulate in the atmosphere. Finally we had almost 21% of oxygen due to this process, and we get something called oxidizing atmosphere. In that atmosphere, bacteria further evolved, you can say, into protist, then into fungus, and then multicellular animal came into being. And in that we have aquatic, amphibian and terrestrial animals. And very late in the Pleistocene period, if you know about these things, mammal came into being, and from mammal humans also came. So this is a small history. You just need to recall all these things. Okay, just listen once. So now, being intelligent human being, they began to exploit environmental resources for many purposes other than just for producing food. So due to that, what happened in the last few centuries, the exploitation of environmental resources has dramatically increased, leading to a serious damage and degradation of environment. So this is basically the topic which we are going to deal with, how humans actions, anthropogenic actions are leading to environmental degradation. Now let us start the formal study of environment. Basically, before we start, we need to understand three concepts very clear. That is, what is environment, then what is ecosystem, and what is ecology. Because a lot of people get confused into this concept. Okay, so it's very simple. Environment is something which is surrounding you. Okay, the environment may be defined as surrounding or conditions in which an organism live or operate. So this is the simple definition of environment which you need to remember. Okay, Now, the most crucial part here is ecology. We will come to ecology, but before that, we will deal with ecosystem. We will come to ecosystem, but we will deal with ecology. What is that? You might be knowing that logy means study. Okay, so a scientific study of reciprocal relationship of living organism with each other and with their surrounding, both biotic and abiotic, is called ecology. So basically it is a study of a particular organism, living organism, with other living organism as well as with its surrounding. Okay, so that is called ecology. Then we have something called ecosystem. What is that? Ecosystem is a structural and functional unit of biosphere consisting living organism in conjunction with non-living component of their environments like air, water and mineral, soil, etc., interacting as a system. So you can see in the figure, this is something called ecosystem. Here you have different type of animals, and then plants, and then insects are also there, fish are also there, and they are interacting, they are interdependent upon each other. So this is a functional unit of biosphere. Biosphere is a large, you can say, the biggest ecosystem you can say is biosphere, which is at the juncture of your lithosphere, then hydrosphere, and then atmosphere, where actually the life exists. That is called biosphere, and the basic unit of that biosphere is ecosystem. So this is one example of ecosystem. There can be many examples of that. Okay, now come to environment. Each organism has evolved according to its environment and depend upon biotic and abiotic component in its surrounding. At the same time, each organism has a role to play in its environment. So every organism is dependent on some another organism for its survival. For example, you can see in this figure. In this figure, this flower has a unique tubular shape, and for that, this particular bird, only this bird can take the pollen out of this flower and transfer it to the other flower for reproduction. So if somehow you will kill this bird or take this bird out of this environment, then what will happen? There might be no one to take the pollen out from here to some other flower, and this species of flower or the plant will die. So this is, and this is also called adaptation. The, as you can see, the beak, it has become it has taken a particular shape, and that is due to the adaptation of to this environment. So they are interdependent upon each other. Okay, similarly you have something called pseudocopulation. At a particular island, you have some species of flowers, you can say, or orchid, you can say, which has a typical shape of a bee. So a male bee, it takes the form of a female bee. So the male bee will sit on this flower or orchid, and they will pseudocopulate, so to say. And what will happen? The pollen will get stuck into the bee, and likewise the pollination will happen. So this is also an example of adaptation. Then we will have something called resource partitioning. What is that? See, if we will try to have same resource, multiple species will try to have access to same resource, then there will be a lot of competition and one might get eliminated. So they have adapted themselves to different niche, so to say. So niches are, you can say, some particular areas. Okay, for example, you can say this plovers, they are nearer to the shore, and the flamingos, they can go further because they have a particular type of neck, they have a bigger neck and particular type of beak. So similarly you can see other seabirds. Okay, so this is called resource partitioning. We will deal with all this in detail, but I was just trying to say each and every organism develop its features according to their environment. Then if you will change the habitat of a species or disturb the balance or interdependence, species may die and subsequently become extinct if they don't adapt features favorable to their environment. So now we'll see components of environment. Basically there are two types of components of environment. One is abiotic component and the other is biotic component. The abiotic component includes sunlight, then climate, which include humidity, rain and temperature. then atmospheric gases like CO2, O2 and nitrogen, then water and substrata, which include soil, river, seabed, that is photic zone and benthic zone. Then living organisms include green plants, other animals, saprophytes, microorganisms, etc. So in environment, we may have two types of environment. We may divide into two types. What are those? External environment and internal environment. In external environment, abiotic and biotic components of the surrounding are dealt with. In internal environment, the internal environment is the environment which is inside our body. Okay, so that is mostly stable. Our body has a particular temperature, okay, particular pressure, so that is stable. So this is called homeostasis. Okay, so we will be dealing what is homeostasis and all further. So here we just need to understand that it has a mechanism with dealing with the variation in temperature and pressure outside its environment. The internal environment has a mechanism to keep the internal things almost constant, okay, and that is called homeostasis. Then temperature and blood pressure are almost constant in this. The success of mammals is attributed to their adaptation of having this homeostasis, okay. Then sometimes injuries, illness or excessive stress may upset the internal environment and we feel like feverish, etc. Okay, example, freshwater fish generally don't survive in you can say marine water and vice versa. So here it will be marine water. Okay, so recently there was a news about Humboldt penguin, you might have read. So Humboldt penguin are penguin generally found in Chile. So they were brought to Mumbai, okay, in Mumbai Zoo, and many of them they died. And why they died? Because their external environment that was changed. So this can happen. This can be one of the effect of changing the environment. They don't survive. The species, they have adapted to a particular type of environment, and if you will not provide all the things which were there, then they may die. Then one more note I want to make, and that is there are two types of you can say fish, you can say stenohaline and euryhaline. So steno you can remember like this by the name of steengunge. So it will have very sharp sharp range. Okay, steengunge has a very sharp range and eury has a very large range. Just remember this, then you will come to know many things. First of all, stenohaline, those fishes which can tolerate only a small range of difference between salinity, those are called stenohaline. Similarly, we have stenothermal. These are those animals which can survive in very small range, very small variation of temperature. Those are stenothermal. Then you have eurythermal, the fishes which can survive, or aquatic animals which can survive in large range of haline differences, that is salinity. So they can survive in marine environment as well as freshwater environment. So they are called euryhaline. And you have eurythermal, similarly those animals which can survive in a larger range of temperature. So this is one thing. And as far as fishes are concerned, you have these two, that is stenohaline and euryhaline. So as far as this euryhaline is concerned, they are also of two types. What are those? Anadromous and catadromous. What are those? So anadromous are fish which migrate from sea up to fresh water to give birth to their young ones or spawn, okay, to lay egg. So they basically live in sea water, but during the time of their laying eggs, they come to freshwater areas and they lay their egg there. So example is salmon and striped bass. Okay, so these are example of euryhaline. Then you have catadromous. These are the fishes which migrate from freshwater down into the sea to spawn. Example is eel. Okay, so this you might remember because last year it was in news. And now come to the next point, which is level of organization in ecology. So basically we have these many levels. What are those? Individual, then population, then community, then ecosystem, then biomes, then lastly we have biosphere. So we will deal with each and everything quickly. So individual is nothing but organism that has ability to act independently. Then it may be plant, animal, bacterium, fungus, etc. Then population is group of species of the same species occupying a definite area. Population growth is related to this, and population growth happens because of birth or immigration or incoming, and population decrease that happens due to death and emigration. Emigration is exiting, so you can remember these words like that. I is for in and E is for exit. Then come to community. In order to survive, organism of one species depend on individual of different species with which they actively interact in several ways. Okay, so communities are often named after the dominant plant species, example grassland, forest, etc. So after community we have ecosystem. So this is the this is the topic which we will be dealing in this chapter. An ecosystem is defined as the structural and functional unit of biosphere consisting of community of living beings and physical environment, both interacting and exchanging material between them. So we will deal in detail about ecosystem. And what is biome? Biome is the terrestrial part of biosphere, is divided into region called biomes. The terrestrial part of biosphere is divided into various regions called biomes, each having characteristic climate, vegetation, animal life and general soil type. Like you have tropical region, then you have polar region. So those are all biomes. Then lastly we have biosphere. What is biosphere? Biosphere is the part of earth where life can exist, and it is a union of three layers, we can say atmosphere, lithosphere and hydrosphere. Then come to ecosystem, which we are going to deal in detail. So component of ecosystem we will deal here. So basically there are two components, abiotic components and biotic component. So here we will see the abiotic component, which are inorganic or non-living parts of the environment. So the very first component is energy. So sources of all the energy on earth is sun, but there are some animals which live deep inside the sea. Those are called benthic animal, and where sunlight do not reach. So the sources for their energy is basically hot streams. So you might be knowing this. Okay, now how the sun energy is trapped to generate energy for other living beings and other organisms. So it happens through a process called photosynthesis. Okay, in photosynthesis what happens? Carbon dioxide plus water vapor and energy that is energy from the sun, in the presence of chlorophyll they react to form the molecule of glucose, you can say, and oxygen. So this happens. This glucose can be in various form like starch and fructose, maltose, etc. And this happens, and this is consumed. This is done by the autotrophic plants, and when it is stored in them, and when it is consumed by, say for example, any any herbivores, then they generate energy, and along with that CO2 and H2O by a process called respiration. In respiration what happens? And for example, a man, he utilizes that starch as glucose, and then O2, he inhales O2, that is oxygen, and he gives CO2 and water plus energy, and that is why he is able to do his metabolic activity and all those activities which he do, which requires energy. So energy determines the distribution of organism in environment, and this is true for terrestrial animal, wherein plant plays this role. The same role is played by phytoplanktons in sea. So that also we will see later. So rainfall. Water is essential for all living beings. Majority of biochemical reactions take place in aqueous medium. Water helps to regulate temperature, and water body acts as a habitat for aquatic animal as well. and it also helps in through transpiration. A lot of minerals and water, they are transported throughout the tree or any plant. So it is crucial for that transportation also. Then temperature. Another critical factor for survival of animal is temperature. It affects the kinetic of enzyme and through it the basal metabolism. So what is basal metabolism? You might be knowing. It is the minimum level of energy, which minimum level of metabolic process which is required for survival of a living being. Then most organisms can tolerate only a small range of temperature, and not beyond that. So those are called stenothermal, as we discussed earlier also. And eurythermal are those animals which can tolerate a larger range of temperature. Low temperature slows down the rate of respiration in fruit. This is very important, and this is a question which was asked in UPSC. So due to low temperature, what happens? The rate of respiration that decreases, and that is why they survive for long in refrigerators. So you can Google it more about this, and we will be dealing all this stuff. We will be also dealing about homeostasis. What is that? Then stenothermal, eurythermal, conformers, the regulators and migrators, etc. later. So the next factor is abiotic component is atmosphere. Important for life in biosphere. It is very much important. It provides the much needed oxygen, then ozone and carbon dioxide. So it helps regulate the temperature of the earth. CO2 makes it warm enough. Then the presence of ozone, that is O3, protect us from UV radiation. That is why atmosphere is very important. Then substratum, the layer of soil which is important for plant as it provides the much needed nutrients. It is also home to various microbes. Okay. Then lastly we have latitude and altitude. These also play a role, and both affect the temperature of a place, resulting in change in climate, which leads to different biomes like tropical, temperate and polar, etc. Now come to biotic components. So the very first component is primary producer, that is the autotrophs. So what are autotrophs? They can be green plant, then certain bacteria, and then algae, certain algae also, which contain chlorophyll and prepare their own food. So basically this is the food chain. By sun's energy and water, the green plant, they prepare their own food, and then grasshopper, they consume green plants, and then frog consume grasshopper. You might be knowing all this. And then snake consumes frog, and snake is consumed by eagle or hawk, and when they die they are consumed by fungus or the decomposers. Okay, so this is a food chain which happens on terrestrial land. Okay, similarly we have something called phytoplanktons, which have chlorophyll, and they prepare, these are microorganisms, they prepare their own food and they are consumed by planktons. So these are also important in the food chain of ocean, and they are further consumed by fish larvae, which are consumed by small fishes, and they ultimately are consumed by predators like shark. So this is your ocean food chain. And what actually is happening is you have something called nutrient cycle. The same nutrient is being transformed from autotrophs to heterotrophs and again to autotrophs. This will go on again and again, but there is something called energy cycle that will be linear, that will be not circular. So energy will come from sun to autotrophs, then there some energy will be used and some energy will be stored, and that stored energy will be further consumed by heterotrophs, and they will also use some energy and further pass down the rest of energy to other organism. So this will be a linear there will be a linear transfer of energy while the nutrient will be circular. So this is very important. This figure is very important to understand. Then the same equation we have discussed earlier. Then we have something called consumers or heterotrophs, who do not make their own food, who depend on autotrophs for their food. So there can be macro consumer, they feed on plants or animal or both. For example, autotrophs, they are producers, the green plant. Then we have consumers, the primary, secondary and tertiary consumers. The primary consumers are also called herbivores, for example rabbit and goat, and carnivores, the secondary consumer carnivores are wolves. Then tertiary consumer carnivores are things like tigers, okay, or animals like tigers. Then we have something called omnivores, which can consume both plant and animal. They are called omnivores, and example is man. Then we have micro consumers, and they are also called saprophytes or decomposer or osmotrophs. So they are bacteria and fungi which obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic substances, that is detritus of plant and animal origin. The product of decomposing the products of decomposing such an inorganic nutrient, which are released in ecosystem and reused by producers and thus recycled. So which we already saw that the nutrients, they go on a cycle, okay, they are recycled again and again from autotrophs to heterotrophs and back again to autotrophs, okay. Then earthworm, they play a crucial role. So earthworm and certain soil organisms such as nematodes and arthropods are detritus feeders and help in the decomposing of organic matters and are called detrivores. So here is a question for you people, that is there any difference between detrivores, then decomposers and scavengers? So you might be knowing what is detrivores. Here are the some of the figures of detrivores. Then decomposers, basically they are bacteria and fungus, so read about them, what is the difference, basic difference. And then scavengers, for example crow or eagle, they are called scavengers. So what's the difference between these two, is there any difference or not? So this is a question for you. So today we'll deal this only. So in next video we'll deal further. So thanks for watching.